Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to you all, wherever you're connecting in from, and welcome to the fourth webinar of this week of the 2022 Travel Retail Sustainability Week, entitled Planet and People Part 2, Diversity and Inclusion. My name is Michael Barrett, and I'm Head of Events and Corporate Social Responsibility at TR Business. And I'll be joined co-moderating the session by my esteemed colleague, Charlotte Turner, who will introduce herself in just a couple of minutes. So thanks to you all for joining us. And of course, thanks to our speakers for the time and the effort they've put into preparing for this session. Special thanks, of course, to our headline sponsor, Mars, for making this event possible and the support throughout the whole event, as well as, of course, as the sponsors for this session, who include Mars, Beam Suntory, Diageo, Altavia, and JTI. And of course, thanks to all the other sponsors supporting this event and making it possible. As you know, this event is made complimentary to you all. We want to spread the message about sustainability, diversity and inclusion, and all the other topics we're talking about this week as wide as to a wide audience as possible. So the sponsor support is really important to make this event possible. So thank you all. For those who don't know yet, this event was launched in the midst of the pandemic in 2021. So this is the second edition, and it's the only industry event that deals absolutely uniquely with sustainability. We don't talk about mags or margins or any of the other partnership issues unless it has something to do with sustainability. That's all you'll hear about all week in all the sessions. The objectives of this session and all the sessions throughout the week is really to share ideas, bring in new ideas, new initiatives, current projects, pipeline projects. So we want to use this, and want you to use this as an opportunity as a springboard for further collaboration and work with partners that you hear from during the session and new companies that on initiatives that you may not have already embarked upon. We want to bring new concepts, potential new partners from outside the industry, as well as hearing from industry stakeholders about what they're doing on all the various topics we're covering. And you'll see fresh faces in this session, as with many other sessions throughout this week. We've also broadened the scope of the topics we're covering in this year's edition. We're looking at this in this particular session on diversity and inclusion, new to the event this year. And in the previous event earlier today, we were talking about health and well-being in travel retail. And we have a great program and speaker lineup for you this week over the next few days, and also since yesterday. We had a great keynote session yesterday morning and a design session as well. I mentioned the health and well-being session earlier today. Tomorrow we have one on circularity and recycling and upcycling, the future of food tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow morning, sorry, UK time. And on Friday we have 3 sessions for you, one on the spirits category and 2 closing keynote sessions called Green Influences, combining people, planet and purpose. And of course, I can't forget the 2 sustainability pitch sessions, one which you saw earlier today, where Altavia, Gonzalez Baez, Mondelez and Nestle were vying for the travel retail sustainability trailblazer and hero status. So congratulations to all those 4 companies on their achievements. Mondelez and Altavia for the trailblazer status, and Nestle and Gonzalez Baez for the travel retail hero status. Congratulations to you all. And tomorrow we'll be seeing L'Oreal, Mondelez once again, Moroccan Oil and New Wave in the second sustainability pitch session. So do tune into that tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK time once again. Please do participate actively in all these sessions using the Q&A function, which is on the right-hand side of this screen. We'll be monitoring your questions constantly throughout this and fielding those questions to our panelists. This session is recorded, so it'll be available as video on demand after the session, about an hour or 2 after it ends. So if you have to run off, or you have colleagues who didn't manage to catch it, then they can always log in and watch it at a later time. And it'll also be on the TR Business YouTube channel in a week or 2 after the event. If you want to see the full program, all you have to do is click on the session description, just scroll down below the screen and you'll find a link to the full program there. So I'm now going to hand over to Charlotte, who will introduce our other speakers. And looking at this panel, which is about diversity and inclusion, I do feel there is a slight gender imbalance, but I can live with that for this one. Over to you, Charlotte, to introduce our speakers.
Thank you very much, Michael. Yes, I am Charlotte Turner. I'm the editorial director at TR Business. I'm delighted to be here with you all this afternoon. Well, as Michael said, or morning or evening. Particularly thanks to our two colleagues, Wendy and Mary, who are joining us at 6 a.m. in the morning their time. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us at this unsociable hour. I'm really excited to have this discussion with everybody here today. It really is one of those quite straightforward topics, but then very, very complicated at the same time. It's based on, on principles that we should all follow, but sometimes we don't quite know how to. And I think in this session, our panelists will share how they're pushing their own diversity and inclusion agenda to ensure equal rights and opportunities are present in the workplace, as well as among partner and supplier organizations. So I'm not going to give away too much before we get into our discussion, but I now want to invite the panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Kathleen, please.
Hi, so my name is Kathleen Fox. I am the Director of Strategy and Innovation for Paradies Lagardère. Underneath my responsibility falls our CSR strategy. So I'm extremely excited to be a part of this conversation as it's near and dear to my heart. I've been with the company for 7 years, majority of my time spent in retail and the merchandising side. Newly in my role for a couple months now in this director position. I'm super pumped about this topic and so thankful to be a part of this day.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Then I'll move over to Mary.
Hi, Chika, Charlotte. Aziem Nasiea and Mary Point, Tenitanach Wamatquium, Itenitanach YVR, Ami Tsep Quatquilum. Honored guests, in the language of my ancestors, I let you know that my name is Mary Point. I'm from Musqueam, and I'm also from YVR. I'm the manager Indigenous Relations at the airport. Right here, Ia Te, the airport sits on Musqueam village of Tsamaltsum. So every day when I come to work and I walk through this building, I'm very well aware that beneath the tarmac and beneath these facilities, my ancestors are resting, as are their belongings, and I'm walking where they once walked. And it keeps me mindful of my responsibilities as we work on the YVR Airport Musqueam Indian Band Sustainability and Friendship Agreement, the first of its kind in the world between an airport and an Indigenous peoples. We'll talk lots about that throughout this discussion, but it's something that I take great pride in, and diversity and inclusion it fits well within the agreement, as well as the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the calls to action under Truth and Reconciliation. We're heading into the 5th year, the 5th anniversary of our agreement this summer, June 21st. So we're really looking forward to sharing some of our accomplishments and best practices that we've established along the way.
Thank you, Mary. That was wonderful. Thank you. And now, Helene.
Yes, there he was, the button. Hi, everyone. My name is Helene van Melle. I'm the Associate Director at the TENT Partnerships for Refugees. I focus on relationships with companies here in Europe. I'm based in the Netherlands, and TENT is basically a network of major companies all around the world committed to include refugees, and more on that later on. I have joined the TENT partnership around 4 years ago, and before joining TENT, I worked at Accenture, so I come from the corporate sector for almost 20 years, and I spent most of my time in consulting and global HR roles. Very excited to be here, part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Coralie. Coralie, you're on mute.
Is it okay now? Okay, perfect. So I'm Coralie, running Altavia Foundation, which is an NGO. Part belong to Altavia Group, and Altavia is the leading group dedicated to retail marketing services. And the foundation has been created only 2 years ago to promote micro retail, because we think micro retail is a great opportunity to do professional reintegration.
Thank you, Coralie. Looking forward to hearing more about micro retail in a few moments. And last but by no means least, Wendy.
Thanks, Charlotte. Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Avis, also with the Vancouver Airport Authority, and I'm a manager in our Climate and Environment Department, and where we are working on becoming the greenest airport in the world. And we have goals under our environmental management program to be net zero by 2030, and also to reduce our waste and reduce our water consumption, but then also really importantly to look at ecosystem health. And so, as Mary said, we are on an ancestral unceded territory of Musqueam, and that sustainability and friendship agreement, I arrived here at YVR about a year after it was signed, and it has so enriched the work that we do, and I feel so thankful and grateful to the learnings and the teachings from Musqueam that have deepened my sense of connection to this sense of place. And coming in as an environmentalist, it's definitely enriched the work that I do. So really looking forward to the discussion here today with everyone.
Thank you very much, Wendy, and thank you to all for that introduction. Now, to allow our audience to find out a little bit more about what you all do, I think I'm going to go back to you, Wendy, and actually ask how the airport actually goes about, and well, actually, you could just elaborate on the pillars actually of the diversity and inclusion strategy that Vancouver Airport actually employs.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I mean, I'm going to particularly focus on our sustainability and friendship agreement and its role in our diversity and inclusion. As Mary said, this is, we're 5 years now from signing that agreement, and it really focused on a few areas. Sustainability being, the overarching framework, but also the friendship between Musqueam and the airport. And so it includes things like investments in scholarships, contracting and business opportunities, revenue sharing with Musqueam, also protecting archaeological resources. Mary very eloquently talked about the land that we're on and the relationship to ancestors. And so we do a variety of work both in the environmental field, but also in kind of arts and culture and exploring and understanding together. So I think the understanding between our organizations is really kind of what the pillar is, being open to listening and to learning from each other. And in that spirit, I'm just going to pass it over to Mary and see if you wanted to have anything to add there about our diversity.
Yes, I also sit on the diversity committee here at YVR. Hi, Chika, Wendy, for that great summary of the agreement and what we've been doing together. So 2 things I want to say. First, it's been really great working with Wendy's team on the environment, because we have a saying in Musqueam, needs hiachlamet tanas shwamatquim ath tameth I shwamatquim ath ka. Together, we are taking care of the Musqueam land and waters. And of all the parts of the agreement that exist that Wendy touched upon, that is number 1 to Musqueam people. Throughout this pandemic, we did experience as many layoffs and contracts that were cut short, and that could have been hard on Musqueam people, but the revenue share that Wendy shared upon or mentioned, the agreement offers a 1% gross revenue share back to the Musqueam people, but because Musqueam knew that the airport was struggling during the pandemic, Musqueam said, you can hang on to the revenue share until we're both ready to walk forward, because this is a friendship agreement. It's a long-term agreement, and we want to make sure that we're walking together along this path. So that's important for me to say, because I think there are a lot of partnerships between Indigenous communities and corporations or other organizations. And it's not just about writing a check. It really is about long, sustainable solutions to protecting the land and waters, to ensuring that there's a pathway from education to employment, and that there's meaningful partnerships and discussions going along. As part of the diversity and inclusion community, we definitely saw during this pandemic impacts on our diversity numbers, and it really came down to last in, first out. and words that crept into our discussions that we never used before. She-cession became something that we never thought we would be talking about, but those are the impacts of the pandemic. And as a person who comes from a matriarchal community, those have strong meanings to us. So as we come out of this pandemic and make plans for the future and for the next 5 years and the 5 years after that and so on, we want to be sure that all of our solutions are sustainable.
Thank you very much for that, Mary and Wendy. Some really interesting points for discussion coming up. But before we do that, I just want to say welcome to our panelist, Orion, who is a little bit late to the session, but I wanted to see if we could hear you, first of all. Oh, you're on mute.
I said I'm a lot a bit late. I'm sorry about that. So
No
many
worries.
technological issues. I apologize.
No, we're just glad to have you. It might be best for you to actually introduce yourself at this point. That would be great. Thank you, Orion.
Yes, very quickly. Hi, everyone. My name's Orion Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Black Travel Box. It's a personal care products company really focused on travelers of color. So everything that we make is in forms and formats that's meant to travel well, get through TSA, and is actually inclusive. So it works for a wide variety of hair textures and skin tones, and something that I just really believe that we need within the travel space. So really happy to be here. Again, apologize for the technical issues.
All right, thank you for joining us. I was going to go back to Mary and Wendy. This is clearly a unique partnership that you two have, and I was just wondering if you think it could be replicated anywhere else in the world, and whether you think there is an underrepresentation of Indigenous partnerships with airports such as yourself.
Do you want to go, Wendy, or do you want me to?
You can go,
Okay.
Mary.
For sure, I believe that there are partnership opportunities all across the globe between any organization and the first people of the land. And I think about the basic diversity inclusion policies as well as the principles of UNDRIP. I can only think that people get displaced because of industrial impact, politics, war, climate, famine, and it's something that we need to be mindful of as we make reparations and move forward into a more sustainable future. So we do a lot of presentations on panels such as these, as well as across the nation here. So I've definitely shared our best practices, but I think it really comes down to relationships. I'm quite sure that there are many partnerships out there that look the same on paper as the one between Musqueam and YVR, but the difference is the aftercare. It can be the best of intentions when you're signing an agreement, but it's really important to spend each and every day following up. And it's very important that the members of the people of the land are directly involved in the implementation of the agreement, not just a liaison. I'm really not in favor of liaisons and of consultants to speak for us, and when I say us, I mean either the organization or the Indigenous peoples. I really think in order to have a truly transparent and effective relationship, there has to be coming together of the two communities of decision makers on both sides, and in that way you can make sure that every time there's a small issue or a large issue, it can be addressed. I definitely can expect my day to change at any moment if someone didn't get a job, or if they have a question about their scholarship and they go to the chief or they go to an elder, and someone's going to call me and ask me what's going on, and I'm expected to know, and I'm expected to attend any job interview or any contract review and make sure that as we build capacity and understanding of what an airport does for the Indigenous community, and as we here in the airport explain and share cultures and teachings so that the relationship can become enriched, that's really the only way that we can really move forward in a good way.
I would also add, so I just wanted to add there that we are seeing, we do see other organizations, the port, for example, kind of looking at what YVR and Musqueam, our agreement, and and looking at what they can do around that. We also just had one of our ground handlers, AB Coast, sign an agreement also to create new pathways for education and employment. So definitely there are learnings from our agreement that are being taken up by other organizations. But I do just want to echo what Mary said, that I could give you the document and you could sign it with someone else, but it's really how you breathe life into that document and that relationship building that really is the agreement follow through. But we definitely are seeing other organizations looking at what we've done and maybe and we are always, as Mary said, happy to share what we've learned.
Thank you, and thank you again for doing that in this forum as well. I could see, Coralie, you were nodding your head, hopefully in approval of what Wendy and Mary were saying, and obviously, you know, bringing a sense of place and introducing local brands is something that I guess that you know all too well about. If you could just elaborate on that and the importance of that, and also the demand from stakeholders in the industry.
Yeah, sure. So we have within Altavia Group a special team specialized in travel retail. It's Altavia Travel Retail. They are doing consulting and creative projects for airport retailers, etc. And for Cartagena Airport, which is an airport in Colombia, there is an expansion going on. And with the client, they have decided to create a micro retail market that will be located in the main hall of the airport. And the idea is to create free kiosk that will be run by local residents. And it will be for them an opportunity to run their own micro retail and also to give visibility to what is local retail. So there will be one takeaway food kiosk and two others that will be more retail. And there is already an NGO, that is a local NGO working with the Cartagena Airport. And this NGO will select the person who will be in charge of those kiosks. So it's totally aligned with what Mary said, and we are trying to really do partnership with local communities here.
I believe you may have a video that may better explain that.
You can launch it. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, please, Ollie. That was great. Thank you, Coralie, for providing that for us. Do you have any plans in the pipeline to sort of recreate more areas like this?
So we should ask to the travel retail team, but when we see this example, we want to implement it to every airport in the planet, and we are thinking, I don't know, what do you think, but we are thinking why airports don't have this idea. It's so simple to implement, like simple, you understand what I mean, but it should be existed everywhere, because in all airports we see always the same products concerning cosmetics, fashion, etc. And it's lacking, obviously, to see what are the local communities can offer also.
Absolutely. Kathleen, I wanted to come to you and see what your reaction was to the concepts in Coralie's video, and also the importance of obviously introducing sense of place and local brands into the portfolio.
Yeah, this was great. It was really exciting, and totally agree that in order to truly represent the community in which our stores and groups are in, we have to make sure that we are offering products that tells that story. So that is a part of one of the pillars in which our companies, our Diversity and Inclusion Council that has been formed a few years ago, created our 3 pillars, and a marketplace, workplace, and workforce are those 3 pillars. And marketplace is exactly that. You know, how do we incorporate products that are diverse enough that it's not the same thing that you would see no matter where you're traveling, and really can capture and represent the consumer that is shopping at airports. So it's really important to us. It's actually a new project that we are going to start working down. As we looked at kind of our objectives in the first couple of years of forming the council, we really spent more time internally in the workplace and the workforce, making sure we with some pretty great initiatives in place to make sure that our own employees and our own community felt included, and that we were doing our best to make sure that their interests were at the heart of everything that we did. And so now our next phase is marketplace. So I loved seeing that. I think it's fantastic, and really in line with kind of what we were thinking about too. So thank you for sharing that. That was great.
Obviously, all companies are on a journey when it comes to anything to do with sustainability and diversity, equity and inclusion. I wanted to pick up on equity in the diversity, equity and inclusion sort of formula, because in fact, we didn't even have equity in the title of this session originally. And as I was researching, and as Michael and myself were having a discussion with some of our panelists, the word equity sort of came into the discussion. Do you have an understanding of the word equity when it comes to placing it in between diversity and inclusion, and what is that, and could you share that with the audience and panelists for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think we use that term all the time, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it's very important as we are on this journey, as you mentioned. You know, that's a big piece of this, is making sure that we have an equal playing field to everyone that is a part of the community that we are working with. So we look at kind of our overall, we talk about our workforce. That's one of the big pieces of that pillar that we're looking for. Are we representing our nation in the appropriate manner, and are we creating those equal opportunities for everybody that is involved? So it's been a big piece of kind of how we kind of tailored our journey and where we're trying to go. So to us, it's equally as important as the D and the I, the E all come together very nicely, and how we have put our journey together and built our roadmap of what we believe success ultimately looks like when we look a few years out today and then continue on.
Mm-hmm. Orion, we actually had a great conversation about the equity in between diversity and inclusion, and perhaps maybe even in the US, it's far more something that's included in strategies. And I was wondering what your take was on that, because obviously, along with the company that you created, you've got a number of years' experience in helping companies implement diversity, equity, and inclusion into their workforce.
Yes, and I think, you know, there's a few things there. You know, the number of years of experience come from being representative of many of the groups that you know don't really necessarily get that those equal opportunities. But it's interesting when we talk about equity versus equality, and what does that actually mean? The idea of, you know, equally giving people opportunities, you kind of miss the fact that there are various circumstances, really different circumstances. And as we think about, you know, just the intersectionality, for instance, I'm a woman of color. So we've got the feminine aspect, we've got the social aspect of, you know, diversity. How do those things come together and create the unique situations that make the playing field unequal or not level for me, are going to be different than the next person who is having challenges that DEI is meant to tackle. So it's really, I loved Coralie's, you know, her video really representing even just the local places and spaces that we operate in, whether it's a travel-based business or not. How do we ensure that we're giving opportunities to people within the communities that are least represented in spaces, and make sure that those opportunities are sort of right-sized for them so that they can actually be set up for success?
Certainly. I actually wanted to bring Helene into this conversation, talking of people that are underrepresented and don't have equal opportunities. I think you're very well placed to talk about those sort of people. Could you let the audience know a little bit more about what Tent Partnerships does? And I believe you also have a video perhaps afterwards that you might want to show.
Yes, thank you so much. And indeed, I thought also that the bridge in this conversation is indeed about providing equal opportunities. But a little bit on background on the Tent Partnership for Refugees. We were founded in 2016 by Hamdi Ulukaya, the CEO and founder of Chobani, well known in the United States. And our mission is really to mobilize the global business community to do more to help refugees integrate economically in their new host communities. How we are seeing a significant increase in the refugee population. I'll come to that a bit later, but basically what Hamdi wanted to do, because of his own experience working with migrants and refugees in his own factory, is really building this network of companies that are all committed to do more and to help the refugees. We believe that businesses play this crucial role in providing these equal opportunities and helping them making a new start in their host communities. Hamdi himself has a Kurdish-Turkish background, so also from his own experience knows what it is to start anew. Given the fact that we have seen this significant increase in the past 10 years in the refugee population, it almost doubled in the past 10 years to over 30 million in 2021, which was before Ukraine. How we see there is this incredible need for companies to step up. Europe only hosted before the Ukraine war more than 3 million refugees. We are seeing now 4.9 million people fleeing the Ukraine. In North America, we have 450,000 refugees. But apart from that, there have been these agreements. There will be approximately 100,000 Afghans resettled in North America. The same number of Ukrainian refugees will be hosted. We see almost 5 million refugees in Latin America coming from countries like Venezuela, but also El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. In the rest of the world, there are many countries with an incredible amount of people that have been forced to flee their home countries. Refugees is something from all times. How we, I think, all in some way can relate to refugees in our own families. Every generation or a few generations gone, there are refugees in almost every family, and they will remain here. So we see this important role for the companies to step up. And maybe this is then a good moment to show the video, and we can talk a little bit later on exactly what we do with those companies in the network.
What does it mean to belong? Is it to be part of a group? To feel connected and safe? To contribute to something bigger than you? Over 30 million refugees have been forced to leave their homes and start over in places that can feel strange and isolating. Tent believes that businesses are critical to refugees finding economic security, stability, and a sense of community. This isn't about donations. This is about companies stepping up, hiring, training, or mentoring refugees in a way that transforms their lives. It's about strengthening your workforce through diversity, building trust in your brand, and transforming the way you do business. This work changes lives. This is Tent.
Thank you for providing that video for us, Helene. That really helps to sort of crystallize what you do. And I think it would be fantastic for all companies that are watching to reach out to see if they can partner with your organization. You mentioned obviously Ukraine there, and we're all obviously so saddened to see that the conflict continues, and we all have lots of questions, I know, probably personally, to understand what was really going on there. How have you been engaged in recent weeks when it comes to conflict in Ukraine?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we have seen an incredible engagement from the companies that are already in the network, but also from other companies that we have started conversations with. I think a lot of people feel suddenly this urgency to do something, to step up. I think also because of the magnitude and the space of this crisis that is developing. So that is positive to see, I would say. I do want, of course, to share a very clear message that we were founded in 2016. We are working with companies to provide employment opportunities and to help them make a new start for all refugees. Of course, there is now the specific focus on Ukrainian refugees. And the big benefit for them is that it's going to be a bit easier, especially when you're in Europe, to start working because of the temporary protection directive that has been approved by the European Union. So there is a lot of focus on refugees from Ukraine. I think we kind of use the momentum to increase awareness about the role that companies can have to help refugees integrate. And we want to focus on providing opportunities for all here.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I believe, Mary, you may have had your hand up just a moment ago. Did you want to engage with what one of our participants, panelists was saying previously? Sorry.
I did put my hand up initially when Coralie was talking, but now I have all kinds of notes from everybody's wonderful statements. So maybe I can just work backwards. I really think, Helena, that video really spoke to me in terms of providing a sense of belonging. That's one of the things our elders asked me when I first came here, was how am I going to take people from a small community and ensure that they don't feel like outsiders when they come here to the airport for work or education opportunities, and it really makes me think about that diversity slide that we all see that shows people of different heights or abilities trying to look over a fence, and they make the boxes even, or they make the fence transparent. But to me and to our elders, that's all barriers still. So burn the fence down and bring everyone into the circle. And I think, Helena, that's really what I saw that that you are doing. Orion, you definitely said people come from different circumstances, and we need to ensure that the opportunities are right-sized. And I think that really is that, and the kiosk opportunity really made me think about what we've tried here at the airport. For example, there's 126 artisans in a little community of 225 houses in Musqueam here, and there's 19 gift shops at the airport, and they do twice a year buying. And to get the artisans matched with that, it was really a heavy lift in terms of merchandising and getting ready and trying to get them to understand about dual languages and Transport Canada regulations for import export. So we did step back, and we did allow people to come and just set up a table and get to know the market and understand what passengers are looking for, and really take it one step at a time so that people could build capacity and understand what is needed. And now, just this past year, after a couple of years of having our own marketplace where you can set up a table at any time, which anyone can still do, we opened a Musqueam specific gift shop where there's more comfort. I'm an artist, I bring my work in, I know the shopkeeper, and I can keep track of my product in a more intimate way, rather than selling to the buyer for the gift shop, the duty-free gift shop here, who might also want to buy for all the shops in North America. So it's about building capacity and right-sizing, what Orion said. And I really want to think about how we're allowing people to still authentically be themselves when they come into a new environment. So what we do on the artist front or on the marketplace front is we allow people to provide 3 levels of sales, and it really matches what passengers are looking for at the airport as well. They're looking for authentic product, not something that's been replicated elsewhere, and they're looking to support local small businesses. I think it's a win-win all around. And so we have 3 levels. I made this product authentically as if my ancestors would have made it. I pulled the cedar bark off the tree. I weaved this hat myself. I soaked it, whatever, and I'm able to label it as such. Or it's my design and I use some kind of technology, a lathe, a screen print, whatever, but it's still authentically mine. Or it's mine and I sold it to our local merchandising company and they make shirts with my design on it, but it's still authentic and it's still supporting local. And I think being able to trace all of that really ensures true economic reconciliation, and for the buyer ensures that they understand they are buying something that is authentic and is supporting local and is a true economic reconciliation. So I know that's a lot of random thoughts, but it was just following up on my notes from what everyone was saying. But thank you for the opportunity.
No, it's absolutely what we want today. It's not just, for me and Michael to ask you all questions. It's for you to ask questions of each other. And of course, we've already got questions coming in from the audience thick and fast as well. I know that all of you wanted to come back on things, but Kathleen, I believe you wanted to come in on this conversation between and this wonderful partnership between Vancouver Airport and Musqueam community. So I'll come to you next, and Coralie, I'm over to you as well because you had your hand raised.
Yeah, so I love everything that Mary's saying. It's exactly kind of what we're working towards. And so that local offering is really important. We actually have a buyer that specifically goes into those markets to look for local, but local can mean so many different things. So Mary very, very kindly explained what those 3 different kind of levels are. But we talk about relationships, and it's so important for us as concessionaires to build those relationships with the airport and those local communities so that when our buying team does go into that market, they truly understand and are correctly representing. So I think, best practices is looking at the relationship that Mary's offering to the concessionaires and being able to provide all of that information. And it's really important as we work with our communities and work with the airports that we do get that information. And if they can help us, put together that product, give us accessibility to the local markets so that we can meet those people. I think it's really important as we move forward in understanding how important this is from the D&I and E-Space, that we do merchandise our product correctly, sign it correctly to that local market. So I love talking about that. I love what Mary was saying, because it's really important to us as the concessionaires to build that relationship and continue to emulate those local communities. And as I said, it's an important piece of our merchandising team that we have a buyer specifically dedicated to understanding just this market and the opportunity that we have.
Absolutely. And this, of course, we're hoping we can see it replicated everywhere in the world, obviously not just in North America. Coralie, I believe you had your hand raised there.
Yeah, it was to talk about refugees also. We have helped Ukrainian refugees, and it was something that was not planned because Altavia Foundation is specialized in promoting and supporting micro retail and professional reintegration. But since we have collaborators in Ukraine, that we have lots of collaborators in Europe and in the countries that are just alongside Ukraine, there was this need to contribute and to help them together. So it was interesting to note that we have organized an internal fundraising which was not planned, and we have raised lots of money together to help the Ukrainian refugees. We have in very few days organized a committee, a small committee, so we could select very small and local associations that we could transfer the money to next to the borders. And also, as Helene said, in the long term, what is important will be how to do professional reintegration for them and to have them getting jobs. So we are also going to work on that.
Thank you for that, Coralie. And Wendy, I think you were next with your hand raised.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up a little bit with Kathleen and what Mary said around in addition to artisans, sort of food is such an important part of culture. And so we also at Vancouver have opening soon, Vancouver's only Indigenous owned and operated restaurant called Salmon and Bannock, which I personally am super excited about for them opening. But also I know, Michael, you had asked me kind of if we knew kind of how important what we do is to our customers. And so I did tap the marketing team to ask. And so we have recently started asking in our customer segmentation studies that we're doing about importance of Indigenous communities. And so in a survey just from last week, actually, of passengers and non-passengers, so family and friends that are doing drop off and pick up, we had over 50% of people say that having a connection with Musqueam and other Indigenous communities in the region is important to them. So that's, you know, that's a big chunk. And given what we've been working on, and we've just started asking this question, I think it'll be really exciting to see if as people see and feel that as they move through the airport, if that number increases. But I was pretty happy that over 50% of people do care. And I think Mary's comments about have the feeling behind that, behind the numbers around that.
Certainly. Orion, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, it's kind of just going back to something that Helene mentioned in terms of having been doing this work around particularly refugees and particular groups for, you know, prior to what's happening in Ukraine. And I think that, you know, over the last couple of years, we've had a number of different levels and types of civil unrest in different communities across the globe. And it really has been an awesome opportunity for us to take that newly found focus and bring in the resources that are really necessary and kind of shine a light on the different various communities. So even as we're talking here about particular communities, it is really awesome to hear the different things that are happening. But it's also great to know that as these programs happen, the next group of focus will get benefit for it, and the next group after that. And so ultimately, when we talk about DEI, when we talk about creating level playing fields, when we talk about right-sizing opportunities and setting folks up for success, it has so much of a broader scope. And I just want us to, you know, think about that across the industry, that lens can continue to not only shine lights on different and new communities, affinity groups, et cetera, but then that can also broaden and be a benefit to all the groups involved.
Absolutely. Orion, you know, your products themselves from Black Travel Box, what has been, you know, the uptake since you obviously created the company, and hopefully, you know, it's increasing in popularity?
Yeah, I mean, coming out of COVID, knock on everything that's wood, it's been an interesting challenge, particularly as a smaller startup trying to essentially kind of get uphill with both a minority focused consumer as well as, you know, very minority forward in our marketing. But that being said, we've had an amazing amount of support from our customers, and I continue to personally get stalked on LinkedIn and Twitter and, you know, our DMs on Instagram, and getting these notes that say, thank you for seeing me. You know, our consumer right now, our beachhead market is, you know, over 15 million African-American travelers from the US that are participating in a $109.6 billion travel leisure market. It's just the leisure market. And so understanding that, you know, when you have a group that knows it has buying power, knows that it both plays 9x, you know, spending 9x over any other ethnicity in the beauty and personal care space, growing gangbusters within the travel space, and knowing that the marginalization, not only from a product perspective, but from seeing a reflection of themselves in media, marketing, et cetera, is lacking. It's been a really powerful thing just to be able to say, I see you. I see you. I'm not going to save the world with body butter, but you're going to feel seen, and you're going to be catered to, and it's going to be in a way that is for you. We're not going to slap a label on something, put it in gold and show a, add shea butter to it and call it, something that is made for you. We're actually going to create something from the ground up. And I think that that is applicable, whether it's a physical product or whether it's a program or whether it's, any other thing, a service space that you really want to capture and reflect the people who it's created for. It's good marketing, it's good business, and it's great for the community.
Absolutely. I mean, we are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workforce, but also making passengers and consumers feel like they're included also. That's a huge part of what you do. You want consumers to come through the airport and feel like they are seen, or they're included, or there are products just for them. That's surely a big responsibility for the travel retail industry, being such a global international industry. So yeah, fantastic achievement for you, and I hope you have great success. Helene, I believe you may have had your hand up as well there.
Yes, Charlotte, I wanted to react on what Orion said previously with this have focus on new developments and that other groups can benefit from it, because that is exactly what we are seeing right now. So within the network of companies that we work with, we have always focused on programs and initiatives for companies to hire, to train refugees, or to help them enter the labor market by mentorship programs, for example. And what we see happening now with the recent developments in Ukraine and this large group of people in the neighboring countries still, that other technology innovations are starting to happen. For example, we see when we see employment agencies offering a new platform that suddenly was there, where refugees from Ukraine can connect easily to companies in the countries where they are now resettled temporarily, most probably. But we also see companies offering remote work and also building platforms that are certainly there to offer positions to refugees wherever they are based in Europe, for companies that might be in Spain or in the UK, and having a contract for a year, and then people will see. So there are many benefits coming out of the crisis as well that will really help others further. And I think that is a positive thing to see, but it's also showing the strength and the impact, strength of businesses, but especially also the impact that businesses can have on lives of refugees. And as you said as well, Mary, beforehand, the sense of belonging, I think that is exactly what we try to create. And when having a new job in a new country, you feel you're seen as well, I would say, and you feel that the dignity again, you feel you can contribute, and that is exactly what we see happening. People want to contribute to their new communities. So having a job, it's often what our founder says, having a first job as a refugee, then that's the moment you stop being a refugee.
Well said, definitely. Michael, I would like to come to you now to see if we can perhaps filter in some questions from the audience. I think it's fantastic the way all of you are getting involved in the discussion with each other. That's exactly what this forum is all about.
Yeah, it's such a rich discussion. We'd need to double the session time-wise and to bring in all the questions, I think. It's great to see so much interaction. I start with some of my own questions, but also filling some from the audience as well. To start off with you, Helene. I know you, in previous discussions with colleagues, Helene, you work already with companies in our industry, travel retail relators as well, such as the hotel groups, Virgin, L'Oreal is a big partner, I understand, of yours as well. There are questions coming in about training. What type of training? Where is that? I've lost the question. Yeah, how does TENT work with businesses to train the refugee communities in specific sectors? And another one, if you can address at the same time, it's clear that many skilled people from minority groups are still not finding their way to the upper echelons of most global industries. How can we balance the important focus on diversity against finding the very best candidate for a role? So that can be addressed by everybody. But if we start with you, Helene, on the training aspect and the importance of that balance.
Yes. So I think what we have seen is that there are many companies that can make a huge impact by training. So for example, IT companies, if I may call out the example of Microsoft, for example, Microsoft has a tool called Azure. They have set up in the Netherlands the Azure Academy, which is a training program to train, of course, participants in the Azure tool, but they have specifically now organized few sessions for refugees. They have actually committed to going to do that in the next 3 years for many refugees. So they train refugees in their Azure tool. People have a certificate, are certified, and they help them connect to their clients who are looking for people who can really work in this Azure tool. So that is one great example showing how you can upskill people and at the same time connect them in your network to clients that have open positions that you are aware of. So that is one example on training. Maybe going back to the other question, Michael, that was more around what can we do more to help highly educated people with a refugee background into similar roles. We, of course, would like to see sustainable relationships where people can thrive using the education, using what they have learned before in their new roles as well. And I think that is exactly what we try to negotiate on with the companies. We ask them to commit to certain programs that provide not only open positions, but also provide this additional training in terms of professional upskilling or working on cultural differences at the workplace to really ensure that any cultural differences are immediately addressed, providing this training to both people with a refugee background and to supervisors, departments, to ensure that we talk about differences we see at the workplace, to ensure that also we have these sustainable and meaningful relationships, which is a very important thing. So being aware that you need to do some additional investment maybe at the beginning makes you up for success on the longer term. And I think that is important. And these companies, we've been able to share a lot of experiences and best practices on that, focus on that type of training to ensure that people can thrive, whether it's lower educated people or higher educated people.
Orion, you wanted to chip in there, I think, at one point.
Yes. You touched on something really interesting, I think, on the tail end there of ensuring that the quality and capability, I think, is there in terms of employment. And there's a couple things. One, we have to remember that differences make it challenging to assess the other person's capability, period. Doesn't matter what the difference actually is. And so in doing those types of assessments, leading with the thought that I presume that everyone that I interview or everyone that we bring into a program is capable, and we need to, they're capable, but we verify, as opposed to given a particular group that we may be working with, we need to make doubly sure that they are qualified, are just two very different thoughts. And just in my experience in corporate for more years than I care to talk about, I think oftentimes the latter becomes the discussion point. Well, we're bringing people into the pipeline for X, Y, and Z, but we need to make sure that they're qualified. If you're doing anything that requires qualification, i.e. interviewing or any type of process to filter, then you're doing that for everyone. And you have to make sure that the words that are used are reflective of the thoughts and the actions that you want to see. And I say that to say, because words matter, right? Oftentimes, some of the first things that roll off of our tongue is a reflection of just, completely unconscious bias, right? I'll use an example. We have a couple people here who English probably isn't their first language. Highly intelligent women have amazing things to say, probably pause a little bit more as they're speaking to find the right word, etc. oftentimes, at least in the US, you will find that that is taken as, oh, they're not confident, they don't know what they're talking about, there may not be. And it's like, no. She's highly intelligent, and you should probably listen to her in her language and be, have your circles run around you, right? So it really is understanding, what does that perceptive boundary, how does that change the way in which we behave when we talk about DEI? How do we, especially when you talk about recruiting, as Charlotte talked about, bringing in people, being reflective of the communities around you, also being really highly aware. If you have a refugee that's coming in and they've been a surgeon for 15 years, just because they're in a position where they now have to feed their family, figure out where everybody's going to live, and just kind of survive day to day, does not mean that their qualification, their education, their experience is any less valuable than that of people who are not in a disadvantaged position. And I think that that's true across any number of these programs, in any ways in which we may have sort of those presumptions, across differences.
And Helene, where am I? Yeah, I'm on me. Helene, obviously that you TENT helps companies integrate the refugee communities into the workforce, into the company structure. But there's obviously foreign communities, refugee communities can be stigmatized in some countries, and with waves of nationalism, that can be a huge problem in society. How does TENT work with the communities to integrate them into society as well as into the companies?
Yeah, I think going also back to your point, Orion, I think it's very, very important, and it's about looking at potential of people and providing as well the potential to providing the opportunities to use that potential in companies. Yes, what we have seen that by sharing examples of refugee stories, having new positions found in their new host countries, showing the motivation, showing their loyalty to companies, that really changes the narrative around people with a refugee background in certain countries. Instead of benefiting from all kind of social benefits, people want to contribute, and that is the story that we need to share and that we need to show, and really use the examples that we see. And I think by communicating publicly about it, by being together as companies saying, we can do this, you can do it, so why can't you do a little bit more? I think that helps change the narrative around the perception that people come to benefit. That is not the case. There is a completely different reason, of course, for fleeing your home country. And we see fabulous people wanting to contribute, and that is what we try to increase awareness around that fact. And we ask companies to think as well about the refugee population when they're looking for open positions, when they want to be more diverse and include refugees come with different backgrounds, different perspectives. They can make your teams more innovative, creative. Think about all the groups, including refugees.
Mary, you had your hand up, and we'll bring this question to you in a second as well. But Kathleen, there's a question coming in about, I've lost it now, I'll go onto this computer, Paradies, Lagardère, and even Lagardère. Do you see the refugee community as a potential workforce and pool to source staff from? So over to you, Kathleen, on that one, and then we'll ask Wendy and Mary on that as well.
I think it's definitely something, as a part of Lagardère travel retail that we would need to consider. I definitely, listening here and hearing Helene's, all her commentary has definitely opened up some doors. And I think we need to go back and figure out if there's a way that we can start working with them and see if there's an opportunity. I would say, what's going on with Ukraine, we have our own task force with all of our countries on discussing exactly what we can do to help. And we've done a lot of support to the community in North America and globally, and this is another iteration of what we can do specifically to touch those refugees. So absolutely.
Can we throw that to you, Mary and Wendy? And Mary, you had your hand up earlier as well.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, just building on what Kathleen and Helene have said, going back to that question, bringing in the best candidate, that to me, that word best is always so subjective in terms of embracing culture, not just integrating, but having a broader fabric to your company. I think that it really comes down to what is the story and you want to tell as an organization, who we are, how we're going to move forward. To answer your question about expanding the workforce, coming out of this pandemic, everyone is short-staffed. So I think if there are workers available while others are adjusting to a return to work idea, I think people should be given the chance. And in terms of training and skills building and capacity, these are something that come down to business policies. So if the business decides we need temporary workers and there are refugees available who have skills or need work, and what we need done, we can train and share, that becomes part of our legacy as an organization. This is something that will be seen multi-generationally as people look at who we are as an organization. I really think we're in this time of learning coming out of this pandemic where everyone is seeing what's happening around the world almost with new eyes, is how I feel, in terms of racism, in terms of political situations, in terms of employment, and generally there's an attitude of knowing and doing better. So I really think on the employment side, there's lots to be done from a policy point of view, from an inclusion point of view, from a commitment to share and teach and train and include and rework that word best into give weighting to people's skills and situation integrated into what the organization wants to measure. I really think that's how we can move forward in a more effective way.
Thanks, Mary. We have Coralie with her hand up, and then Kathleen will come to you just after that.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say that we have a responsibility as companies and NGOs to identify associations to help, but we have also this responsibility to organize pro bono projects. That means to help collaborators that want to get involved and to give them opportunities to help directly, sometimes people, to coach them, to mentor them, and they are full of programs that we can design for pro bono to exist inside the company. And it's something that really collaborators like and want, so it's also our responsibility to organize that.
Yeah, thanks, Coralie. Kathleen, you want to add something?
Yeah, and as we talk about employment, as we're looking for, you say the word qualification, and that can mean so many things, but I think one of the things we need to recognize as qualification is a different perspective, right? You know, we want to make sure that we are hiring people that can bring a new perspective, be innovative, and think of new ways to do things that we currently aren't doing. So we shouldn't shy away from the differences. We should welcome the differences so that we can create a diverse work environment. And one of the things that we've done in our council is create an influencer program. So it's a voluntary program where people throughout our company can be a part of something to help influence change and bring new perspectives and get their voice heard. And then the amount of overwhelming participation in some of the events this group has done, and one is we're calling it the Fireside Chat, and it happens almost every month or definitely every quarter, but we bring in topics that sometimes are hard to talk about, but we bring in people from the company to have really candid conversations. And the response from this has been way far better than we could have ever expected as a council, but it's bringing new perspectives, allowing people to understand differences and allowing for them to have a safe environment where they know that the company is supporting them and want to continue further development. And then allowing for mentorship, right? Making connections that maybe would be unexpected. Maybe someone in this department who's very siloed working in, say, accounts payable, who really only deals with one accounts payable, now has a connection with a field associate who they hadn't had before and found a common interest or maybe an uncommon interest and are celebrating the fact that they can even have these conversations in a new platform. I think that's the one, I think everyone can agree, the one positive of COVID has allowed us to figure out how to work remote and how to work virtually, which has opened a lot of doors for building relationships and being able to adapt to our personal lives. So I think a qualification, if we're going to use that term, really needs to be perspective and differences. So.
Thank you for that perspective, Kathleen. One of the intentions of this week is to give people ideas of how to improve their procedures and practices. And you mentioned those conversations. I don't know, didn't quite hear what you called it, but there's people that call them town halls, or was it a council or something?
So through our Diversity and Inclusion Council, we host what we call fireside chats.
Fireside chats, okay. Yeah, sorry, Kathleen, I think that's fantastic. And again, this is, I guess you could say, a fairly easy way of introducing the start of some good diversity, equity, and inclusion procedures. It's a great way to start including everybody, obviously, as the number one. But some of those conversations, I can imagine, were not always easy to have. As you quite rightly pointed out, there's some controversial topics that were thrown up, but at the end of the day, perhaps joining people together that didn't realize that they had those similarities or feelings or thoughts, and in the end, you bring in your whole workforce closer together, I guess is the ultimate aim. And I think that's brilliant that you're able to share that, because I think other companies will think, actually, that's something that we really should be doing. To be honest with you, we don't do that at TR Business. We talk regularly all the time, and we like to think that we have great procedures in place, but that's something that we could always introduce. So that's an idea for us to take away. Sort of having conversations that aren't just about the day-to-day business to-do list, whatever. So yeah, that's a great idea for everyone to take away.
And one little follow-up to that is we had this amazing gentleman, Dr. Stephen Jones, come and speak to us at a seminar at the end of last year. And I had the privilege of having one-on-one conversation with him. And I was like, your 1-minute elevator pitch, like, what's the biggest takeaway from, talking about diversity and inclusion? And he said, be comfortable with the uncommon, right? So when you meet someone, you say, hi, I'm Kathleen Fox, and you try to find a common ground. Like, what do you both have interest? Instead of looking for the commonality, look for something that's different and take the moment to learn. And I think as we in the council have kind of embraced that, and that's these fireside chats. It's okay that maybe you don't understand or you can't relate. That's totally fine. There's so many things that you can learn and benefit from that experience or from that person, that it's okay to not have something specifically in common with that person. So I think it's brought a lot of that conversation. It's been easier to have those conversations when you keep that in the back of your head. And I know now personally for me, when I meet someone, I don't talk about what I know. I'm like, okay, tell me about you. I don't know about that. What does that mean? And it helps, from a business and from a personal relationship standpoint.
Addressing the elephant in the room immediately, rather than waiting for several different meetings between you and that person to really bring it to the fore. Wendy, I think you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just want to say, Kathleen, I mean, that's so true. I mean, that being in that place of uncomfort and sort of not knowing what to do. And I love working with Mary. The number of times I've been like, Mary, what am I doing? I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I don't know. How do I do a land acknowledgement? I don't know, and I know like some really good advice where Mary was just like to speak from the heart and just be open and curious and where you can learn. One of the things that we did, so we are salmon safe certified airport, so the first airport in the world to be salmon safe certified. And so what that means is everything that we do in terms of water quality. YVR is on an island. Mary talks a little bit about, flows into the Fraser River, one of the world's most important salmon bearing rivers, and salmon being an iconic ecosystem species of great cultural importance to Musqueam. And so it's very important to us that anything we do around our water quality that goes into the Fraser River and right at the mouth of the ocean with orcas, and so extremely important. And so we were going through our recertification process. And so we thought, and it's a very sort of Western science based. And so we said, well, what if we invited Indigenous ways of knowing into this process, and what would that look like? And so we kind of went to Mary and to Musqueam and said, we don't know what this looks like. We don't know what we're doing, but could we explore this together? And so Musqueam reviewed all of the policies and the procedures from an Indigenous lens. And then we actually had an Indigenous assessor from Musqueam come and join the team and provide that perspective. And it was such a rich learning experience. And then it's done for the next 5 years. And so we're going to be bringing more of that in. And I didn't know what that looked like at the beginning, but just asking the question was kind of the really important first step of that. So, and that's sort of from an environmental field, but it was a great experience. And so now we're looking at our other things that we're doing and saying, how can we take a reconciliation lens on some of the other things that we do? So I'm really excited about that.
I like the way that you say, you know, remain open and curious. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. Of course, always remaining respectful. That's the main thing. But you know, being open and curious is how change can really occur. Orion, I think you had your hand up as well there.
Yes, definitely. And to the point around being open and curious. Sometimes respect is one of those lines that, you know, gets crossed because you just don't know. And I think we have to be clear. We have to come in with a clear and positive intent, right? And be willing to say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that, or, you know, oh, okay, got it, won't do that again. And on the receiving end to say, oh, clearly your intention wasn't there. You know, you get a pass, right? Let's keep learning and growing together. It's no different than taking ski lessons. I live in Denver, Colorado. I can't ski. I've been here way too long. I still can't ski. And you got to just be ready to take the knocks and sit on your butt and not take it personally. But to Wendy's point around the benefits of bringing in new wisdom, similar to what Kathleen was saying, you know, being willing to learn something different. You know, I'm a businesswoman first and foremost. I'm like, how do I grow my business? I think for each one of us here, we have a constituency, whether that be a community group, whether that be a consumer set. As retailers from, you know, the audience, you're serving travelers, you're serving people, and you want to be able to deliver something that is most compelling for them, that gets you to your end, right? And so in the case of bringing in Indigenous wisdom, it's like, it's the reason why it's wisdom. Just because it came from somebody different doesn't mean it isn't wise. And that wisdom can be beneficial to each and every end that you may have, even though it may be coming from a different lens. And I think that that's something that's really, really important as we think about DEI in terms of employment and bringing people into teams. It's going to serve ultimately the purposes of our businesses, of our nonprofits, and our goals as, you know, individuals and organizations very, very well.
Absolutely, very well said. I think we're running out of time shortly. I mean, we've still got around just over 10 minutes left, 10-15 minutes. Michael, do we have any more questions? I'm cognizant that I don't want to leave the audience out, of course. You're on mute.
Something about tailors being the worst dressed, something like that. So question, coming back to Kathleen again. Sorry, Kathleen and Wendy and Mary. Do Vancouver Airport and Paradies Lagardère work proactively with the people with disability community? So it might have been covered already, but we'll throw that out to you. Start with you. You were nodding there, Mary and Wendy.
Yes, we do on a number of levels. And I'll just give some examples. The airport works from an accessibility point of view for our passengers and our staff. We work with an organization called the Rick Hansen Foundation, which looks at slope and accessibility to the building and washrooms and so on. We work with the Canadian Institute for the Blind to make sure that there are Braille signage, as well as supports for easy to access telephones, or we've moved our speakers to different levels throughout the airport, so it's not one loud blasting sound, but just a constant sound for those who might have hearing abilities. We're very mindful of the colors of the flooring, of the walls, of for those who may be subject to to visual impacts of color and direction, and we're mindful of what kind of directional signage we use. And I mention all of that because we all as staff have to take that training so that we are mindful of from a hiring and coworker or passenger mindset in terms of what we need to do in order to be respectful. We work with all of those same organizations in terms of a hiring and contracting perspective as well. And before the pandemic, we were an award-winning airport for diversity and inclusion, and we took all of those considerations into our fold and made sure that we measured and accounted for. We set targets and we updated our policies to do so, and we bring expertise in to make sure that we're managing and moving forward correctly. We make sure that we're involving others in order to do that. So it's sort of a multi-layered answer, but it comes down to burning that fence down and making sure everyone's in the circle so that we can invite others in a way that is understood by all.
I have to say here, like starting at YVR in 2018, one of the pieces of mandatory training that I did was around people with disabilities. Was we got to experience what that was like in terms of we had to wheel around the airport in a wheelchair, and we had to get on to our public transit, our SkyTrain, and travel one stop and then come back. And I'm telling you, it was the most eye-opening experience for me. We had various levels of visual impairment, and we had to, as a group, we got $10 and we had to go to Starbucks and buy something for everybody. And I really regretted choosing a hot drink, I have to tell you right now. But just that, it completely changed for me the way I interact and my understanding of that, and having that experience. And it was awkward and uncomfortable, and there was lots of nervous laughter and stuff, but I'm so glad that I had that experience, and it just changed that. From what I learned from that was really great. So that is the kind of thing that we do, in addition to all the things that Mary talked about.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. Sorry, I just want to say, like, doing that, getting onto the SkyTrain or going up a ramp with the wheelchair, and I was getting stuck too, just like Wendy said. And there were twice, I'm very mindful of, someone came behind me in the chair and just pushed me up, and then didn't ask me where I was going or anything, and kept on going. And I thought, they probably thought they were being helpful, but they weren't being helpful. And the same thing when I had the blinders on and I was trying to find my way, and I didn't realize at the top of the stairs, and someone just grabbed, a complete stranger grabbed my arm and just put me in another direction and said, there you go. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going now. So it does make you mindful of putting yourself in some, I mean, of course we could take the blinders off and get out of the chair, but in terms of how we relate to others, as Wendy said, it makes you more mindful of being respectful. Ask a question first. Do you need help, or what can I do, instead of just pushing people along? And I think that statement sort of covers diversity in general, like don't assume. Don't assume.
Absolutely. It's what was mentioned earlier on about respect and asking the questions as well. I've had the personal experience of trying to play wheelchair basketball and wheelchair rugby, and it's absolutely impossible without hours of training. So I know where you're coming from with that experience. On that note, before I come to you, Kathleen, on that note, in the session description, we refer to the 2014 Paralympics campaign, the Yes I Can video. I don't know if anybody has seen that, whether our panelists or our viewers, but I really do encourage any company looking or having doubts about how they can work with people with disability to watch that video. Is absolutely fantastic and mesmerizing and eye-opening in terms of the superhuman, as they call themselves, superhuman abilities of people with disability. And that was made, I think it was by Channel 4 or around UK Channel 4 around the Rio Paralympics. So please do watch that on YouTube. Kathleen, can I take that question over to you?
I think it goes back to the relationships with our airport partners, and making sure that when we build out our stores, that we're keeping in mind all of those things that both Mary and Wendy mentioned, because it's very important that we're emulating that. So they're doing all this work in their airport space as you're traveling, but in our stores, they have to have that same experience as well, to make sure it's easy for them to access things, making sure the checkout experience is seamless. So a lot of what we do gets approved by the airport to make sure that we are doing exactly what they are doing, so it's the same seamless experience as they come into our stores. But I think as we work with a lot of our brand partners, it's a lot about relationships and making sure that we're all on the same page. We work with a lot of specialty retail brands, as long as our travel essentials and our dining spaces. So it's an opportunity for all of us to ensure that we are inclusive of all different people that are coming into the airport. So it's definitely a priority for us as we build out our stores and making sure that the accessibility is there.
I think in the next session on diversity and inclusion, we'll certainly bring in somebody with experience from the disability community. It'd be great. Charlotte, before I hand it back to you, I just have one question for Helene. I'd like to reach out. So for companies interested in reaching out to Tent Partnership for Refugees, what are the next steps concretely? What do companies have to do who are interested in integrating refugees into their workforce? How can they get in touch with you, and how simple a process is it?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a very simple process. They can reach out to me, and of course, I'm more than happy to talk to any company that wants to explore opportunities to work more with refugees, and we can take it from there. It depends on the focus of the country, where they would like to start working with refugees. If it's me or if it's someone else in our team that will build that relationship. But yeah, no, we're of course more than happy to connect, and just want to encourage more companies to do that. I think what I want to share, especially here, is that I think refugees can strengthen your workforce. See the pool of talent that we have among the refugee population, that not all companies are so much aware of. And I think it's important to see that, and it can bring a lot of benefits to your company as well. So yeah, more than happy to connect and to start this conversation.
Thank you very much, Helene. We are running out of time now. So what I wanted to do before we end is come to each of the panelists and ask what your next steps after this session might be. Now, I appreciate that it doesn't have to be concrete action immediately. You know, we can't promise that, but even so far as having the right conversations with the right people in your organization, or even approaching someone that you hadn't thought of before, even connecting with each other from this panel, you know, it'd be great to see how we can really progress from this session and take it forward, take the conversation forward, take action forward. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to pick on someone first, and I'm gonna spring on Orion first.
Yeah, I think that, well, this has been such a rich discussion, and I think that the ultimate thing that I've taken away is, in so many aspects, representation matters, because representation provides opportunity for us to learn from people who are different from us, who are by having exposure, right? So representation, typically when we say representation matters, it's like, oh, well, you know, I want to see a person who looks like me doing a thing so that I know that I can do that thing, but also having that person do that thing lets the people around them know that we can do that thing. And so for me, it's, you know, broadening the scope. I am the organization at this point. We're still quite small. And so it's even just broadening the aperture of that scope of what we think about in terms of being inclusive, and what does that truly mean, not only internally, but supplier diversity. What does that mean in terms of how we are looking at things like ability, to Mary's point, and understanding that moments can be jarring without understanding. So it doesn't matter if you've got blinders on, or if you just have a different cultural lens, understanding that the actions and the language and the words and how we approach things can be jarring for other people, and being open to that on a number of different levels, I think is key. And so even for me, in a position of, you know, where I live, being every minority you could probably check off the box, there are still things that I need to learn, and there are still things that I can learn, and that we can all learn from each other. So I just kind of take that away from this really rich discussion.
Thank you, Orion. Thank you very much. And Kathleen?
I will say it has been an honor to be a part of this discussion, because I've learned something from each and every one of you amazing female leaders in your organization. So I will take away little tidbits from what everyone said. And another woman, an expert in this space, said to me once that our goal may not be to change people's beliefs, but it's really to change their manners. And I've always kept that, again, in the back of my head as I've worked in this space. And I think I've learned something from each one of you in order how to do that. I will definitely be reaching out to make further connections to see how we can maybe continue to collaborate and work together, because each one of your organizations can contribute or help as we move forward in the travel retail space. So it's been a great conversation, and thank you for all of your transparency. We talk about that all the time, but it's great to hear the stories and understand where we can grow and to continue to bring each other up as we move forward.
And please keep TR Business informed of any partnerships struck with any of the panelists, and we'd love to continue to tell your story to the rest of the industry. Helene?
Thanks. Yeah, so much has been said already. What struck me, I think, again, is seeing that we have so many similar challenges and that it's so important to communicate about it. And I think the big sentence was again, be willing to learn and embrace. So, and I definitely connect with the people here in the panel. Thank you.
I think you may receive an influx of LinkedIn invitations or emails following this. So I guess your next step could be open and patient with people that are approaching you. And Mary, on to you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Before I say what I'm going to do next, I'm just mindful that in all of our diversity and inclusion discussions, we didn't touch upon the LGBTQ2+ community. And so I just don't want anyone to think that it's something that isn't addressed in our diversity and inclusion. In Musqueam, we don't have a word to define anyone's sexuality. I think it just always was accepted. But that being said, for those who are tuning in, I want people to feel seen and acknowledged. For us, to answer the question, as we rebuild, we'll continue to include. That's the story that we want to tell. We want to ensure that sense of belonging for all, and we all want to share culture with one another to enrich who we are. My great ancestor, Kea Palanok, when visitors were first coming in the area, he told us, don't forget who you are, but don't forget who we are. It's important to acknowledge our culture, but together we're doing stuff. We're walking forward. We're in this together. So I think that's important to remember.
Thank you, Mary, and also thank you for that very valuable point about the LGBTQ community. I mean, it's almost impossible to get everything into this one discussion, we didn't touch on that, but we do have a diversity and inclusion webinar dedicated to just that topic coming up in June, on the 1st of June, and we intend to really focus more on that and really grab in all the different elements to that. So yeah, please, everyone watching this now, please come back for that, and we look forward to extending the conversation as well, but not just for that webinar, but on trbusiness.com we're happy to have conversations regarding the travel retail industry and inclusivity going forward. So please, anyone, get in touch with Michael or myself, Charlotte at trbusiness.com and Michael at trbusiness.com. Sorry for that interjection. Coralie, over to you.
Thank you so much. I do agree there are lots of synergies and common challenges. On our side, the next steps are the fact that we are going to develop Altavia Foundation. We will launch our own platform dedicated to micro retail to give tons of examples of micro retail concepts for people who want to launch their own business. We will also develop a village like the one you have seen in the video, but next to our office, next to our Parisian offices, and very open to all the neighborhood. It will be one day dedicated to micro retail. So what I wanted to say is that when you start building something and you are open to local partnerships, they are full of opportunities that are coming, and this day will be open to the collaborators, but also to the collaborators of companies in our neighborhood, and also open to the associations working in professional reintegration. So lots of different people around that will contribute to this day.
Fantastic. Look forward to hearing more about that, certainly coming up.
We will give you the date. It will be the June 27th, because it's the day of the micro entreprise worldwide. It's a day that has been decided by the UN.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for giving us that fact. I was not aware of that. So thank you very much, Coralie. And finally, Wendy, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think for me, coming out of this, I've just learned a lot from everyone on the panel, and but I'm really struck by and you know, in my heart, going out to the people of Ukraine and thinking about refugees and what I don't know. I certainly do things in my personal life to try and welcome refugees who are arriving to Canada, but I'm going to send an email to my CEO and ask what the airport authority is doing and supporting refugees who are arriving here in Vancouver, and is there more that we can do? So that's my next step.
Fantastic news, and I'm really thankful that we've kind of helped you, given you the impetus for that perhaps today. So yeah, well done everybody, and thank you so much for your contributions. One of the finest webinar sessions, in my humble opinion, that I've ever attended. So thank you for helping me learn an enormous amount as well. And before I continue gushing too much, I'm going to pass over to Michael.
Thanks, Charlotte, and thanks to all of our wonderful panelists there for that really rich, as you've actually all said, really rich exchange and discussion. And it's great to see, as we mentioned at the beginning, you know, this session, as others, being a springboard for future collaboration between industry stakeholders and new entities in our industry, who we hope will be integrated and be more commonly known and used as organizations to support our industry. And we look forward to seeing Helene and others like yourselves at other industry events where you can get even more known. And on that note, you've got a whole load of events you can come to, because we've got, as Charlotte just mentioned, we've got the webinars coming up in June on diversity and inclusion on June the 1st, and health and wellbeing on June the 15th. We've got our own Travel Retail Consumer Forum coming up on the 5th to the 7th of September, which is all about the consumer, traveling consumer behavior. And that's in Cyprus, hosted by, or a host sponsor with Cyprus Duty Free, in partnership with our consumer research agency Mindset. And we deal with all different topics about consumer behavior, including sustainability. We'll be having sessions there on diversity and inclusion also, and health and wellbeing. So everyone's welcome to that 2-day event in Cyprus, 5th to the 7th of September. And of course, we have a Travel Retail Awards coming up in Cannes on the 4th of October, the ceremony taking place in Cannes during the TFWA World Exhibition. And the entries for nominations are open at the moment, so you can send in your nominations up until the end of May, and then they'll be voted for by consumers, traveling consumers. Thousands of traveling consumers voting for the best category nominations, and even the best sustainable supplier as well. So do send in your entries for that session. So lots coming up in the coming weeks, but immediately in the next 3 weeks, we'll actually be in Singapore again at TFWA's Asia Pacific event at the Sustainable Future session, which we're curating together with Mindset once again there. So everybody welcome once again at that particular event. Of course, this event is not over yet. We've got 2 more days, 2 sessions tomorrow and 3 on Friday. So do tune in. And as I said, if you've missed any of these sessions, please do go onto this platform and check out the video on demand service. Once again, finally, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for attending, our speakers, but also Mars, Beam, Suntory, Diageo, Altavia, and JTI for sponsoring and supporting this session. Have a wonderful rest of day wherever you are, or full day for those tuning in from Vancouver, and take care. See you soon. Goodbye.